Hi guys, and welcome to today's episode of Tutorial Tuesdays. Today I am taking you through frequency separation from start to finish. I know it's a pretty common technique and almost everybody uses it, but I just wanted to show you how I do mine in case there is a difference and you can learn something new. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into Photoshop and show you this image of Temi Nikon that I shot. Apart from frequency separation, I'm going to be doing a couple of other things like just tweaking the image and making sure that everything is perfect. For example, I don't like the fact that this headpiece has a couple of problems here, and we're just going to fix the image up generally. Everything we can do to make this image look better. Okay, so I am going to start by using a frequency separation action that I got from fxray.com. I will put a link in the description below for you to download this action. It's totally free. And then all you need to do is come to this play button here, press play, and then you can see advanced frequency separation. Okay, so there's advanced 16-bit, advanced 8-bit, frequency separation 16-bit, and frequency separation 8-bit. So we work with 16-bit frequency separation. Okay, so the difference between advanced and the regular one is, let me show you. Okay, so when you press advanced, the next thing it does is it asks you for how much blur, right? So this blur is what determines how much of your information or how your picture is separated into both texture and color. Okay, so frequency separation separates your pictures into two layers, the high frequency layer and the low frequency layer. The high frequency layer has all your textures in it, and the low frequency layer has all your color information. What this does is that it allows you to be able to retouch or edit the color or the texture independently of each other. Okay, so just for this image, I'll just say 10. Okay, and say okay. Now, once you do that, it creates all of this for you. So it creates this check layer for you. We'll turn that off for now, and then what you now have is two high frequency layers, two low frequency layers. Now the reason this is that it just gives you a spare. Okay, if you're doing frequency separation and what's the word now? You surpass the number of undos you can do with Command Z, and you made a mistake. Sometimes you just have to delete the entire thing. But the way this works is that because you have high frequency 2 layers and low frequency 2 layers, you can delete either your high frequency layer if you make a mistake and just copy this base one and start again, or you can delete your low frequency layer, or you can reduce the opacity of your low frequency or high frequency without damaging the image, because you also have a safe one here. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so I'll delete this and delete this, and also we'll go back and try the regular frequency separation, right? So we do this one, we press 10 and we say okay. Now you said this is more familiar. This just has two layers, one high frequency, one low frequency. Okay, now the problem with this is that if for any reason maybe I overdo it on the low frequency layer, I can't just reduce this. I can't reduce the opacity of my low frequency because there's no reference point, there's nothing to work with. Okay, so I always advise people to work with advanced frequency separation. It looks a little bit more complicated, but it's better to work with. So I'll press that and I'll say okay. Now the check layers is the next thing I'll talk about. People use it different ways, but the way I use it is I just turn on the first three. So I turn on invert, I turn on black and white, and I turn on solarize. Once I have those three on, sorry, mistake. Once I have those three on, then I have my image looking like this. Now what this does is that it helps me to see exactly what is what, right? I can see the way my highlights start to interact with my midtones and go into shadow. I can see the shape of the lights of the face, so that when I'm using my mixer brush tool on the low frequency layer, I know exactly what I'm brushing. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'll turn this off so we can see our image properly, and then I'll just go into high frequency. But before I do that, let me talk about blur, right? We did something earlier where it asked us for how much blur we wanted to use, and I said 10. I'm just going to quickly explain why I chose 10 and what choosing different numbers would mean. Okay, so if I say go to frequency separation, let me use a simple one for this purpose, and I use say a number like 1, okay, and I press OK. Now what happens here is that the amount of information that stays either on your texture or your color layer is different, right? If I start to brush, right, I'll pick my mixer brush tool, right, and I start to brush. The moment you start to brush, you will notice that it is damaging all of your texture. That's because we've used too small a number. So can you see that, right? On the other hand, if I delete this and I do it again and I use too high a number, say like 60, let me just go overboard, right? And then I start to brush, you will notice that it's not making any difference. Now, it's not really making any difference because all of your color information is here, is on your high layer. So if you use too small amounts of blur, what happens is that your texture comes to your color layer. And if you use too much, what happens is that your color goes to your texture layer. Okay, so you don't want either of that to happen. You want to be somewhere in between. And in my experience, when I'm working with a picture that is about this size, in terms of how much information I have to work with on the skin, I go somewhere around between 8 and 10. Right? If I was working with a headshot that is like from the neck up, I would go with like a 14 or a 16. And if I was going with like a full length picture that is about a full length picture from head to toe, I would use say 2 or 3. Okay, so you can use that as a judge or sort of like a scale to work with, but ultimately do what works for you. Okay, so for this image, I'll still stick to my 10, or maybe I can do 8. So let me just go click 8 and say okay. All right, so now we're going to go into frequency separation proper. I'm going to click the first high frequency layer right here and zoom in. And then once I zoom in, the next thing I want to do is go to my clone stamp tool. So by pressing S, you can see my clone stamp tool here. I want my opacity and my flow to both be at 100. I can reduce the size of my brush a bit. Please, when you're using your clone stamp, it's always good to zoom in and then just go for every single blemish that is obvious and that you can fix. Now, the only thing I'll say is that it's important to make sure that when you're fixing these blemishes, you need to sample from a place that has similar texture. Okay, you don't want to sample from somewhere that doesn't have as much texture. Okay, so if you see, for example, this area here doesn't have as much texture as this area here. If I sample from here, and this is what I'll do, I'll damage all the texture, and vice versa. You don't want to sample from here and work here. Okay, so you just be careful where you sample from when you're using your clone stamp tool. Okay, so I am just going to, we'll probably follow this part of the video, but I'll go in and get rid of all the blemishes. It's also always very helpful to zoom out from time to time to see exactly what you're doing and zoom in back. So I guess different photographers spend different amounts of time at this particular spot. I mean, you could put 1 hour into it, you could put 5 minutes into it, you could put 30 minutes into it. It's a matter of what now? how much work you're willing to do. But I feel like the more time you spend here, the better your image turns out overall. There is no special trick to it. You just have to go in and remove whatever you need to remove. Okay. We're lucky that we're working with an image that doesn't really need a lot of work. There are some images that need more work than this, I'll admit, but why it's good to get a good model, get a good makeup artist, get someone with good skin, so that you don't have to do too much work. I know some people like to see that before and after, and they want to see that huge, massive difference. Um, okay. So we'll check before and after, and we'll see not a lot, but just a few. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to soften some of this very harsh texture. If you look around her chin here, close to her lips, we have this very harsh and coarse texture. So I'll teach you how to sample it, how to soften it a bit. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is that I want to try this, and I'm not sure if it will work. So what I need to do is I need to create a new high layer, right? So that if I don't like it, or if I feel like it's too much, I can either delete it or reduce the opacity of it, okay? So I'll press Command J, and now I have a third high layer, and I'm just going to hold Alt and hover in between the two layers and click. So what that does is that it clips the new layer to the old one, right? We can also, I'll press Command Z now, just right click and say create clipping mask. That will do the same thing. Okay, now, so I'm working on this new one now, and I want to soften up all this texture, right? So I'll go back to my clone stamp tool, and I'm going to increase my brush size a bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the opacity of my clone stamp to say 20 or 19%, 18% thereabouts. So here you want to use a relatively bigger brush and just sample an area and then go over all of the harsh layers now with your clone stamp at a lower opacity. So what that does is that it softens up the texture. Now you have to be careful when you're doing this, because what you're doing essentially is that you're damaging texture. So you only have to use it in areas that have really harsh texture. So I'm just going to show you before and after so you can see the difference. Also be very careful if you're going to use this in areas that have highlights, because what happens is that it sort of dulls the highlights and you really can't get that shine back. So be careful when you use this method to soften up your skin tone in areas that have really hard harsh textures. So okay, so we've gone from here to here. It's not a world of difference. Let me zoom in. Okay, so I'll go back to 100%, and I'll just go in to fix up any more of these blemishes that I can see. This is just for tutorial purposes. Normally I'll spend more time here fixing more stuff, making sure that more stuff is perfect, but oops. Please don't forget the body. I know that happens a lot. We just focus so much on the face and we forget the body, okay? So we want to fix the body as well. Okay, so we have that, and that looks good, right? We still have all our texture. We don't want to damage the texture. We just removed all the unwanted ones. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do is go to our low layer, okay? Now, I'm just going to explain how the mixer brush tool works. Okay, so for people that don't really know how it works, I'll create a new layer. I'm just going to fill it with white. Okay, and then I'm going to fill it with some light gray. And then I'm going to add some darker gray. And then I'm going to add some more darker gray. Okay. All right. So say this represents like the range of tones on somebody's face. So from highlights to mid-tones to darker mid-tones to shadow, okay? Now, when you're retouching with your mixer brush tool, what you want to do is that you want to make sure that these transitions between highlights and lighter mid-tones and darker mid-tones and shadows are not too abrupt, okay? You don't want this harsh line just right there. You want it to sort of like seamlessly go into the other one, okay? So sometimes what your mixer brush tool does is this, is that, okay, so I want you to look up and look at the settings of my mixer brush here. I really don't adjust any other settings apart from my flow and my wet. And really, I only adjust my flow, okay? So that's what affects how much effect I want my brush to have, okay? So I am just going to brush in between these two lines to try and sort of like make sure that there is a seamless transition between the brightest part here and this next part that is just almost as bright. Okay, so I'm just brushing in between the two, right? I can do a little circular motion in between them, and then once I have this, I can now do bigger circles, and then voila, right? So right now we just faded from white to lighter gray, and unlike before, we can't tell exactly where one starts and where one begins, where one ends and where the other begins, okay? So you can do the same for here, where you can just brush. Now you notice that I am not brushing from like my highlights like this into my shadows, no. Neither am I brushing from my shadows into my highlights, no. I am just working on the edges. So you want to work on the border, okay? Just stay at the border. Don't go into the other country. Stay, stay, stay at the border. If not, you get evicted. Okay, deported. This is not Big Brother. All right, so this is where our check layer comes in, right? So I can turn on my check layers and you can see. Let me zoom in. Check layer helps you to see the border. So you can see the border here. You can see where this tone starts to meet this tone, starts to go into another tone, and all of that. So this also helps like a guide for you to know where to work with or where to work. You know where you don't want to pass and all of that. There are some exceptions, obviously. So if you have like dark circles under the eyes, you want to brush from the lighter areas up into those dark areas to sort of even them out a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to start brushing. Okay, so I'll pick my brush. I'll reduce the size a bit. Now remember that you're really brushing just one motion. So I'm not going up, down, no, I'm just going like up, 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 up. So trying to fix that dark circle there. I'll fix this one as well. So many times when you start to brush, you notice some things that you're supposed to have fixed in your texture layer, and you can go back and fix them. So this is what we have so far, before and after. And I'm just going to go into my high layer right here, and I'm going to fix this line here. So I'm going to use my clone stamp and say an opacity of 50. I'm just going to go over the line. Same thing here. Okay, so you can turn on my check layer, you can see before and after, and you can see exactly what I've done. Okay, so I'm just going to pick my brush, and I'm going to make sure, see this border here is so messy. I'm just going to draw lines in between them like this and make sure that they seem neater. I'm also going to draw lines here. Okay. You can also use your mixer brush tool to even out places that have the same tone but have some blemishes that you can't fix with the clone stamp on the high layer. you fix them right now with the mixer brush tool. So you can see before and after. You can see what my check layer looks like. So before and after, and I'm just gonna fix up all the other areas of the face that needs fixing. It's always good to turn on before and after every time to make sure that you haven't overdone anything, you haven't changed the shape of the person's face. These are important things to do. Once you see that you've made a huge mistake, you can always start again. There is no harm in doing that. I'm just going to spread this highlight on her forehead a little bit so it looks more centered. I mean, you don't have to do that, but okay. So I'm going to come with my high layer here, 20%. I'm just going to soften up this texture a bit. I've lost some of my spark and the highlights there, but I don't mind. Okay, so I'm going to go onto her body now and fix. I mean, the body is easier to fix. It's just straight lines. You know where to brush. So the body is always easier to fix. I fast forward this part of the video. Okay, so now we have gone from here to here. Okay. I feel like I have a problem with some of the way the highlights are shaped here. So I'll create a new low layer and I'll clip it just like we did with the high layer. I'll pick a brush, reduce the flow. Let me check before and after again. Okay. I want to make sure that I keep the same light shapes from before the image. I mean, except it was bad and you really want to change it. Most times you just want to stay the same way that the light on the person was shaped. Okay, I can increase my flow back now and just work on the body so I can see the real image. Okay, so we have that and I think we are good to go. I mean, it can be a lot better, but I'm just going to keep it at this. So I'm going to reduce the opacity of this low layer a bit, just to limit the effects of what I did here. Okay, so this works fine. And that's pretty much everything I would do for frequency separation on this image. Okay guys, so that really completes our frequency separation. I know it was a lot, but I hope you're able to follow through. I'm just going to do a few more things to make this image look a bit better. But before I do that, if you have not subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? Alright, so just go now, click the subscribe button, okay? Turn on notifications so when I post a new video, you would see it. And then also make sure that you put a like on this video. We're trying to get this video to like 150 likes or 200 likes if possible. Okay guys, all right, so we'll jump right back into the video and I'll just tweak a few things to try and make the image a little better. Okay, so now my frequency separation is closed. I'm just going to stamp visible layer by pressing Shift, Option, Command E. Right, we have that, and then I am going to start to clean up some of these problems I have. Now the first problem I have is that I don't like the way the headpiece, I don't like this part here. Okay, so I'm just going to take my clone stamp, so I'm going to increase opacity to 100 and I am going to fix that there and there. Easy peasy. Okay, the next thing I want to do is fix this area here that doesn't have as much hair. So I am going to go and with my clone stamp again at opacity and flow at 100, I'm going to reduce the hardness to 0, and then I'm going to sample from here and then just come over here and then click. Okay, easy. I sort of click outside. Okay, this works. Easy peasy. Okay, the next thing I'll do is I'm going to fix this little strand that is here, and I'm going to go and fix it like that. Okay, so just like that, we already have some of our problems fixed. Now the next thing I want to do is that I'd really like this headpiece to be as even as possible to create this arc around here. So the next thing I'm going to do is use Liquify to fix that, okay? So I press Command J and then Shift Command X. Shift Command X takes it to Liquify, that's a shortcut. And I'm going to zoom in and I'm just going to pick this out. I think it's called the warp tool. Yeah, the forward warp tool, W. Now I didn't know this for a very long time, but you can adjust the pressure on your warp tool, right? At 100, that's how it comes. Whatever you do is really, really magnified. But at pressures like 1 or 2, when you do, it's really, really controlled. So this helps you to, really use your Liquify without fear of overdoing it, since you have to do like a couple of times to get to where you want to be. So I'm just going to go over this image and make sure that my arc is as good as possible. You will notice I keep reducing and increasing the size of my brush. That's because I want to, when I want to target specific areas, I will have to use a small brush to target the specific areas. Right, so for example, I want to target this little place here. I need to reduce the size and then just target that area alone. So I'm going to zoom out a bit, well, all the way. I need to fix this. Alright, so I'm just going to check before and after, and you can see that that makes a huge difference to how her headpiece looks. Press OK, zoom out, and we're going to see everything we did here. Just group it and you can see before and after. And you see that it's the little things that really affect the image. So just keep an eye out for, things that are not uniform that can really distract from your image. Okay, the last thing I'll do is I'm going to fix her lipstick a little bit. You can see the inside here. I'm just going to fix it with clone stamp, nothing serious. Clone stamp and opacity on 30%. And I'm just going to brush inside of there. Just like that, and I can clean the tooth as well with my clone stamp. And that is it, guys. So we went from this image to this image. Okay, so we went from here to here, from here to here. Okay guys, thank you for watching today's episode of Tutorial Tuesdays. I hope it was useful. Please tell me if you liked it in the comment section below. Tell me what other tutorials you want me to do in the comment section below, and have a nice week, guys. Cheers.